podcast host, Mando Rayo. And thanks everyone for coming. Mando is a taco journalist and the co-creator of the United Tacos of America TV show, host of the Tacos of Texas podcast on KUT, which is now in its 5th season, and author of the Tacos of Texas cookbook. As an avid taco ambassador, food explorer, and street ethnographer, Mando has traveled across the United States to uncover the tastiest tacos, from the Rio Grande Valley in Texas to LA and New Orleans to New York City. Mando was also a James Beard Foundation Awards finalist in 2022. And we're going to play a trailer for the new season of your podcast. But please join me in welcoming Mando.
My voice reaches, so I don't know if I need I probably need the mic for the video, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the first time I heard the term taco journalism was when I heard you speak back around 2010. I love how this term encapsulates both writing about food and the people who are creating the food. So did you invent this term, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, well, back in the day when people used to vlog, remember that? We started, so first of all, I was always a taco guy because I'm from El Paso, and then coming to Austin, I had just kind of like this different type of experience around food, right? And also, I worked in restaurants as well. And so I was like, I was used to Mexican border food, spicy and rich, bold flavors. And then I started working at some Tex-Mex places, and I was like, oh, okay, you're gonna put queso on everything. That's okay, it's okay. I appreciate it now. But, for me, it was always about, trying to bring representation to media, I would say. And back then, 20 years ago, yes, it is a 20-year overnight success story. I was like, well, where are the stories of people that I know, that are cooking in the kitchens, grandmothers and moms and uncles, they have this rich tradition, but it's not getting captured. And so I was like, well, that's kind of really, so a friend of mine asked me to write up, and I wasn't a writer then yet. And he was telling me, okay, well, where can I get the best taco? I'm like, okay, well, I don't know about the best, but I'll tell you where I go. And he wrote it up for a blog called The Austinist back in the day, right? And then it kind of took off, and then a friend of mine was also writing a blog, and then basically they kind of coined the term taco journalism, and I'm like, all right, and it was 3 white guys and me, so I definitely came on board and gave them street cred. So that's kind of but for me, this idea around taco journalism is this idea around understanding not only the recipes and the food, but how are people's culture part of that? What are the traditions? And as well as what are the issues that go along with that? It's you can't talk about the food without the people and the impact that they're having in communities. And so for me, taco journalism is about bringing all the full picture, the big picture, comprehensive of okay, well, let's think about you were mentioning earlier around Taqueria and Cesar Chavez, right? Las Trancas, right? And on Cesar Chavez, we did a whole episode on taco gentrification, where you can walk there, you go to Las Trancas, great $3 tacos. You go down the street, you still get a $1.50 taco, but then at the end of that same street, there's a barbacoa plate for $20. So we asked those questions around who are those tacos for, and who can afford to go to these type of places. And so for me, that's kind of the richer, deeper stories around taco journalism as an example.
I love that. So let's talk about the new season 5 of your Tacos of Texas podcast. What can you tell us about this season? How do we sign up to listen to it? And I want to learn more about the butchering the whole hog, and also I love the episode of the little kids making salsa, not little, middle schooler.
Yeah, that's little. Well, yeah, so we are in our 5th season, El Cinco. And, you know, it's been interesting for us to really dig into not only like, you know, we just heard the trailer, so Rick Martinez is a celebrated chef. He has a book, a salsa book called Salsa Daddy. And he's originally from Austin, and he came into the studios, we did an interview. But then I heard about this salsa club out in Del Valley, in a middle school in Del Valley, right? And a friend of mine told me about it, and I was like, and they're selling it after school, like at the bus stop. And I'm like, that is such a great story, because, you know, and then learning about what what the instructors are teaching them around entrepreneurship and life lessons and sales, but also like actually, you know, we went there and they made the salsa right there, you know, it was great and it was tasty, you know, so it's those sweet stories. And so for us, like what I would say, like a lot of the podcast episodes are definitely interviews to understand kind of the different aspects of a person's role within this taco, you know, taco culture, if you will. But we also do like in the field. So we go to the salsa club. We went to Taidue and did a class on whole hog butchering and understanding kind of like what is that process. I'm a carnitas man myself, so I've always cooked, you know, but I never really butchered like a whole hog. And so we went and we're here in East Austin, and I mean basically from head to tail. and then we also went up to Georgetown at El Grandpa's Mexican Barbecue, and they do lamb barbacoa in above ground pits, and it's just amazing what they're doing. And then like our one-on-one interviews that really dig into like a core subject or somebody's experience, like you know, in the trailer, if some of you, you know, if you know Spanish, some of our episodes are in Spanish. So we suggest you bring your Duolingo with you or a Spanish-speaking friend. But we talked to cocinera, which is, you know, a restaurant worker, woman restaurant worker, and like how sometimes when we think about like, you know, all those awards and the features go to like restaurant owners or even like the chefs, they end up being mostly male, I would say, you know? And so nobody talks about like, well, who makes that kitchen run efficiently? And that's usually like cocineras, right? And it's like, where do these recipes come from? Probably them as well. And so we talk about the role of what they have to do to work with their whole team to make sure that, you know, when that plate goes out, it's a beautiful and tasty plate, you know? So we talk about that, but then we also talk about like tacos and tequila, which is like this whole idea around like, if you think about that, it's a shtick, right? Here in the US. But we dig deep into culture around like, well, tequila has this 10,000 year history, you know, that's a mix of that mestizaje, the mix of indigenous and Spanish, and what does that look like, and how do we honor some of that history that, you know, nowadays when we think of a tequila, it's just like a shot and you're done and that's it. But no, there's a lot of history within that. And so it's a big mix for this season, and we're super excited. Tomorrow, I think our 6th season goes out, so it goes out on a weekly basis. Started in August, and then so tomorrow we talk about Tex-Mex versus Mexican with a chef out of San Antonio. And they're just a lot of fun and informative, and you know, you can definitely, anywhere you get your podcasts, we're also on YouTube as well.
So did your cookbook lead to the podcast? And I know you have had a TV show as well. So how did all of these develop?
Yeah, well, you know, so it started with like when we were writing, when we were blogging, right? And then then we had a publisher reach out to us, and we did the Awesome Breakfast Taco Book, which is, you know, the most important taco of the day, by the way, if you don't know that by now. And so for us, our books have always been about people and places. Because, yes, there's one thing to learn about, a restaurant and the recipes, but, for us, it's also about like honoring where, some of those recipes come from. And sometimes they're just in backyards and little kitchens, and so, so with that, after we released our first book, then UT Press reached out to us to do the Tacos of Texas book, and they were like, "What's next? Dinner tacos?" I'm like, "What?" No. We're gonna go like full state, and so we did 10 cities, across the state, from El Paso, the Valley, Abilene, and Houston, and obviously here in Austin as well, in San Antonio. And anyway, so every city has its own take on tacos. Like you can get any kind of taco pretty much anywhere, right? But there's an iconic taco for every city that we found. And so, if you want to have good barbacoa, you go to the Valley. You have great carnitas in El Paso. Puffy tacos in San Antonio, right? And then in Austin, it's a migas taco, So it's like, it can be found anywhere, right? It's a plate, but it's also a taco. You have tortillas, make it into a taco. But yeah, so then after that, this was early on when we were doing a lot of video. We started doing video, and I told my my business partner, back then we were just shooting photos together, and he was starting to get into video. And then I was like, I need a video to market the book when it comes out. And so we did. When we were out there, we were in 10 cities, and I was talking to people and eating tacos and doing all these interviews. And so we did it, and we did, just like a 2-minute trailer for the book. But then people thought it was a real documentary series. So then I used that to pitch to PBS National, PBS Digital Studios. So we got that. So we did one season with them, and then after that we went national with United Tacos of America, and it was on cable. Robert Rodriguez's network was called El Rey Network, and so we did that. We went to places that you can think of that have tacos, Chicago and LA, but also these places that how did that happen? Like Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, they're all from, they have a nickname called Mexington, Kentucky, certain neighborhood. Or like LA, New York, for a long time people say, oh, there's no great tacos, but there are, just gotta go to the right borough, like in Queens, And so for us it was about not only the tacos themselves, but let's explore the people and the issues, and migration patterns and some of the struggles, that they went through to establish their businesses, but also what's the culture and the vibe of that city too. And so we did, we did some there was some bourbon tastings out in Kentucky. So yeah. So and then then the pandemic hit, and so everything shut down, right? And we did do one season in studio here in Austin, but then after that I pitched the podcast based on the book. Because I was like, we need to get back to Texas. There's a lot of stories to tell here in Texas, and so I pitched KUT, and they're like, yes, we need it, let's do it. And they were also exploring podcasting too, and so it's been 5 years.
Fantastic. And you guys can, don't forget to enter the drawing for the books, but you can also buy them at the Capitol Visitor Center bookshop. So I love this line from the introduction to the book. The main difference, quote, the main difference between Mexican and Tex-Mex is that one is rich in earth tones and sauces, and the other is rich in queso. So do you still stand by that? And what is your favorite Tex-Mex place in Austin?
I do. So that when you think of Tex-Mex, is queso is one of those things that really stands out. There's a very specific style. So when you think about Tex-Mex, I think of crispy tacos, definitely breakfast tacos and barbecue infusion, like barbecue tacos for sure, brisket tacos, and I think of like the enchiladas with a chile con carne sauce on it. But queso is the one that's like universal. You know what I mean? Like people in Wisconsin know it. People in just different parts of the U.S. know what queso is now, right? And so I think that's part of like the story of Tex-Mex. When you think about like so Texas as well as Mexico, there was all these different regions for the food, right? So like say what's a well-known like Mexican type of food that stands out to you, a regional food? Chilaquiles, okay, yeah, so good. That's a lot of chile relleno. What about steaks when you think about like? Bistec, okay, yeah, good. Or like Oaxacan food, right? So that kind, right? And so, like throughout Mexico, the variety is so rich, right? And there was a big through definitely in the San Antonio and South Texas through the missions, there was a lot of commerce happening there, right? Even before that. And so part of that was this idea around what's available now after Texas became Texas in a sense, right? Because it was part of Mexico. So then they lost that access to some of the migration of people and the foods, right? So what was available? What was easier to get? It was probably easier to get a cheese from Wisconsin than from Oaxaca. You know what I mean? And so we explored that actually in our previous seasons episodes with Chef Rico Torres out of San Antonio, and we talk about queso and the meaning of queso. And so I think for me, I would say queso is emblematic of Tex-Mex food for sure. What's my favorite Tex-Mex place here in Austin? Tamale House has a big place because I know it from when it was on Airport Boulevard. I don't know if you remember that. 75-cent tacos. On a Sunday morning after going out in your 20s. But like what for me also what's emblematic of Tex-Mex here in Austin is like a crispy taco. So it's like, hey, there's nothing wrong. What's the name of that? Crusteca has a really good old school crispy taco plate that I do actually enjoy. So
I definitely need to try those. So since the cookbook came out, what's been the reaction from the public, and what are the recipes you get asked most about?
Okay, so I would say before the book came out, we went out and started asking taqueros, people like in trucks and home kitchens, those kind of things, especially like around the Rio Grande Valley, smaller towns, and they really were like, "What? You're writing a book about tacos? Like, I don't believe you." But then there was like this one place that we went out in Pharr, Texas, and was asking a couple of places there, and one of them was like, "Okay, well, what is this? Why would you write a book about tacos?" I'm like, "Well, let me explain it." And like, wait, where else is it gonna be on? It's gonna be on YouTube. Oh, YouTube! Come on, yes, you can try my beans. So I think people like at the time it came out, people really were like, "Wow, this is a thing. You're capturing our culture and our communities." Because really, like, it's sure, I think in the book maybe there was some chefs in there, but most of them were just like regular folks running restaurants. And that we went in there. We basically like crowdsourced, like, "Hey, where's your favorite place? Where should we go?" Like we know. I knew what I knew, but like, and then we also formed back then it was called the Texas Taco Council, where you nominate like that one person that in your community that knows of all the great places, So then they told us, okay, go here, go here. They ended up being fixers, right? And then so all of a sudden you have like, hey, my grandma's in the book, and her flour tortilla recipes in the book, or her salsas in the book, or the discada recipes in the book, the one that my uncle made. And so it's like those kind of things. So I think like people kind of saw themselves in that book, and it's just like really nice. We interviewed over 100 people for this book, so it was kind of crazy, but and then like some of the recipes we had to like translate from like like you have like abuelas and moms and aunts that like, well, I don't use the recipe, I just cook. Like this much, a puño de sal and all this. I'm like, okay, well, what's that? That looks like a cup. That's too much salt. But we have to kind of like do that, right? Because nobody has ever asked them like for their true recipe, right? And so, but like, I guess for me, like some of the recipes that people do definitely ask about are some of the like simple ones like bistec or a good marinade for fajitas, Definitely the more complex is like carnitas for sure. But a lot of people ask for salsas and a tortilla recipe, for sure, yeah.
And I love that you've captured all these women's recipes that otherwise maybe would have been lost when they were gone. So if I were opening this cookbook for the first time, what's an easy recipe to start with that you'd recommend?
A salsa, for sure. That creamy taquero salsa that you see kind of everywhere. And it's really simple. It's jalapenos, it's a little bit of onion and garlic, boiled, and then pureed with canola oil, which is a neutral oil. And what that does, it actually makes it creamy. People think it has like sour cream or some sort of crema or even like avocado, and some do, but this one's not. It's super simple. So start with the salsas, Start with the salsas, and you don't have to, make your own tortillas. There's plenty of El Milagro tortilla, makes great tortillas here in town. H-E-B has great tortillas too. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So I love this book, Vitamina T for Tacos, am I saying that right? And it's a children's book that you did, and illustrated by Martha Samaniego Calderon, if I'm pronouncing it right. So tell us about this book and how it came about.
Well, this book has always been kind of like this idea around just bonding over my kids and tacos, right? And like growing up, and this idea around like, what are the different elements of tacos, and so my a good friend of mine, a comadre, Suzanne Garcia Mateos, we would always hang out, have kids the same age, and we're like, oh, we should, she was also in education, and so bilingual education, and so I was like, well, we should do it like a kid book, like an alphabet book, so that way, it kind of ingrained, start them young. So we kind of started writing it, and super simple, but also funny and interactive for the kids. And so we connected with Martha, who's an illustrator, around like, okay, well, what references do we need in a book about tacos and kids learning about food, but also has a cultural element. So some of the pages in there like say like O is for onions, and it's actually it's in Spanglish. So some are in English, some in Spanish, and a mix of both. So it's not like one page in English and one page in Spanish. And so for us, it was kind of a way for us the way we speak. And so like there was like, say the letter O for onions, and you know the onion would be crying because it's being cut. And there's a song by Vicente Fernandez, a verse, llorar y llorar, and so that kind of becomes part of it. So there's some definitely cultural cues that are in there that really, what I would say, like, you know, just resonate not only with families but with the kids too. And there was one in there where there's a the lengua taco, and then the cow's there, and the tongue is in the tortilla. But what it does is leads to very curious questions. The kids are like, well, when do you cut that tongue?
So in your book, you write about Austin as a mecca for breakfast tacos. So what are your top 3 Austin spots for breakfast tacos today, and why?
Yes. Okay, so we were just talking about that. We just did a taco tour. I just did a taco tour this weekend, and we definitely started with tacos at 5 p.m. So one of my favorites, definitely, they've been around for such a long time, is Veracruz All Natural. And you know, the migas is like their claim to fame, really nice. But then also like Joe's Bakery on East 7th Street, you know, like, yeah, that's so good. You know, their battered bacon is like, oh, it just hits, you know. And then they have the thicker kind of, the way I see it is like the thicker, like San Antonio style tortilla that's like thick and fluffy, but also like you can still, like, it's powdery still, you know what I mean? And it's soft, and it's really good. And then, let's see, another breakfast taco spot that I go to is Capital Taco. Yeah, Capital Taco's good. So they've been around in different locations, but they're in Super South Austin. They're in Super South Austin inside of a gas station off of Menchaca. Yeah, those are really good. And then, let me see. Yeah, like I'm an egg man. So I'm like, you gotta have good eggs, like runny egg.
Okay, so I just 2 days ago listened to your episode about Mando Rayo, the Japanese Mexican fusion restaurant, which is up in North Austin in the Hana World Market food court. So Asian and Mexican are 2 of my favorite kinds of food. I'm so excited to hear about this kind of fusion. So what do you think is spurring this creative mix? I was kind of surprised to hear about, you know, the history of the Japanese in Mexico, which you guys talked about, and
Yeah. You know, like the thing is like with the stories of tacos, like you know, people treat tacos, you know, the tortillas as a canvas, right, to do whatever they want. And Austin definitely has a creativity. People here, you know, it's a creative town for sure. And as well as like, it's super competitive. So if you're gonna do something, you gotta do it really well, right? And so that's the thing about Austin, and then you have like new generations of taco makers that they have different reasons for making the tacos versus the older generation of like, hey, we just gotta pay the bills, we got a restaurant to run, and that's it. The next one is like about that creativity too. So that's kind of where Ramen del Barrio comes in. You know, you have this idea around these Japanese flavors. You know, when you think about ramen and just the idea around pork and how they use pork in ramen is also very similar to carnitas. And so that's kind of like this idea around like, you know, when you make carnitas, traditional carnitas, not in an instant pot, okay? It takes like 3 to 4 hours to make, right? And then when you think about ramen as well, if you want to make a good ramen, it's not an instant thing, right? And so you kind of like infusing those flavors as well together, and they become something new, I would say, you know. So at Ramen del Barrio, they have a carnitas tonkutsu, and as well as they have a menudo one too, if you like menudo. And then they also have these amazing tacos too. They have some great and I think it was an aguachile that they had there when I went the last time. But great seafood selection, you know. And the place is super tiny. It's in a little kind of like Asian mart, I guess, you know. And it's so great. And then there's a lot of history with Japanese immigrants to Mexico. And so there's the story there too, that around that fusion of both. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I can't wait to try that restaurant. So the age-old question when eating tacos, and when do you recommend the flour tortilla, and when do you recommend corn? Because I never know. Waitress asks, and I just randomly say something. So.
Yeah, no, it's actually true. You gotta pair the tortilla with a good filling, right? And so I would say, like, when you think about traditional Mexican tacos, you think about bistec and al pastor, right? And carnitas and buche and tripas. You can go into the glands if you want to. Those are great, you know, kind of when you think about street tacos, you know, those are great. And so corn. And when flour comes in, it's like is when the idea, okay, so part of that is the history of, well, how did wheat flour get introduced into Texas, right? So that came through Louisiana into the missions of San Antonio and South Texas, because before then, this was all part of Mexico, right? And so they had, before it was a name of a tortilla, it was like a corn patty, if you will, right? And but because of that introduction into of the wheat flour into Texas and then into northern Mexico, you do get a lot of that flour tortilla, right? And then the commercialization of wheat flour too in the 50s, in the 40s and 50s, kind of influenced that as well. And so definitely you gotta go with, like, if you're doing a breakfast taco, you gotta go with the flour tortilla, especially in Texas. But you can do a with corn for sure. But I think, you know, the idea around a tortilla de harina or a flour tortilla goes well with, like, a smear of beans with, you know, eggs or barbacoa or carne guisada, those kind of things. But yeah, so I would say, like, okay, carnitas, definitely corn. A brisket taco, flour, you know. Let me see, what else? A bean and cheese taco, definitely flour. Yeah, so, you know, I think, you know, one of the things that I do is when I think about it, is gonna, does the tortilla fit kind of whatever you're cooking it with, the protein and whether it's, you know, it could be mixed veggies, those kind of things, but does it fit well, right, with that? And so more of I would say more of the traditional Mexican fare is definitely with the corn, unless you're eating a gringa. A gringa, everybody know what that is? No? It's, you know, a loose term for white lady. But it's also a quesadilla, right? Melted cheese. Yeah, that's on flour, right? With melted cheese, and, like, you can kind of have a choice of, like, bistec or al pastor with that as well. So yeah, so you do see a lot of, like, flour in the northern part of Mexico, and in South Texas and even in West Texas. I grew up with flour tortillas as well. So
it's great to have that guideline. So what projects do you have coming up, and what else would you like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have our season coming out. Make sure, you know, It's on KT Austin or on the NPR app. Follow Tacos of Texas. We're on socials on United Tacos of America, on Instagram, and I think for us, it's this idea around like, okay, how do we kind of keep telling these stories? I'm always looking for feedback and say, hey, I know of a place, I know of a person, and we're always like, people always send me messages around like, oh, if you're in Amarillo, you need to try so. I'm like, all right, let's go. And then when I'm not, so we do a lot of stories. I have a production company. We do a lot of stories through video and all that, and then the podcast is in there. And then I have a nonprofit that I co-founded called the New Philanthropist, and then we help people bring representation to nonprofit boards. So we do that as well. So if that seems interesting, just look us up at the New Philanthropist. So.